Please listen to Shellie today as she comes as a missional mom to speak to us. She will be speaking from her heart of what God has told her in the extraordinary privacy of her own life that now becomes public as she lives it as a missional mom. I encourage you to say yes to God's dreams in your life. Come, Shellie, be with us.
Good morning and happy Mother's Day. So I'm so excited I finally get to share with you. Jeff's asked me to share this morning about the story of my family, and I really feel blessed and honored to do that. I'm not sure if it's finally to shut me up or if it's really just to have me share with you about God's mission in my life and my family's life. Now, I couldn't have said it better than the music that we sang earlier about telling the old story, because those are some old songs I learned as a child. And I'm going to be telling you a story that I was a part of, but it started with my parents. And I'm going to speak with you today about Ethiopia. Some of you don't know where that is. That's in East Africa, surrounded next to Somalia, Kenya, and below Egypt. It's right in the Horn of Africa over there. I'm going to share with you about Christ being alive in Ethiopia now, well in Ethiopia, and our family's ongoing work there in Ethiopia. So today on Mother's Day, I'm really excited because my mom's coming this afternoon, or the next service, and bringing some of our family, so that's even more thrilling to me. But as a daughter and as a mom and now a grandma, most importantly as a Christian woman, I feel passionately that we as Christian women have a great strength. And we can use that strength in powerful ways to strengthen our families, our community, and our world. And no more than what's happened in this community this last month or these last few weeks. We can strengthen that through our sharing with other women and our sharing in this community. Now, some of you may think, there's no way I can do that. You know, I can't go out and speak to other people. I can't make a difference. But I'm here to tell you, you can make a difference. You don't have to go off to Africa to make a difference. You can do it right here in Valley Springs. And this church is already doing that in many ways. So today, it may be Mother's Day, but every day is our Heavenly Father's Day. He created us moms. He knew what he was doing. Christ loves us, and he wants us to make a difference. We can choose to impact our lives and our families' lives. We can choose to impact our communities, and we can choose to make a difference in this world. So today, I'm going to share with you about my family, my learning to listen to what Christ is calling me to do, and sharing with others the amazing God that I serve. You know, I do serve an awesome God. And the older I get, not that old yet, but the older I get, the less timid I am about doing that. You know, it used to be kind of shy. You stand back. You don't raise your hands in church when you sing, those types of things. You know, it doesn't feel funny for me anymore to share my faith or to praise God or tell someone that I'm a believer, whether it's here at church, whether it's at my workplace, whether it's overseas in Ethiopia. You know, my God is powerful. He has stood with me. He has protected me. He has carried me through these fires in my life many, many times. He has never left me. He's carried me through losing a child, carried me through divorce, carried me through, you know, many trials that we all have. We all have those trials. But he has strengthened me, and he's amazed me over and over again. God is merciful. He forgives our mistakes, and we all make plenty of them. But he allows that, and he is merciful with us. There's a song that I love, and it's by the group Point of Grace. And it says, "Heal the wounds, but leave the scars, a reminder of how merciful you are." You know, I want those scars. I want to be reminded of God's mercy in my life. Christ wants me to trust him and have faith in him. He wants us to all trust him and have faith in him. And in the Bible it says, Hebrews 11:1, it says, "Now faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you do not see." And in verse 6 it goes on to say, "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe he exists." We have to believe he exists, or we can't believe in him. "And that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." We need to seek God earnestly in order to see the rewards from him. So my goal today is to share with you my personal journey in learning patience, obedience, and faithfulness as I experience God's work in Ethiopia in the past, and Ethiopia present, and in Ethiopia in the future. You know, I look at this as kind of a trilogy in my life, a book trilogy that God is writing. And when that song we sang about the old story, we all have a story. And how do you want God to write that story in your life? What do you want that story to end with, and how do you want that story to tell and represent that story in your life to others? Now, Ethiopia Past started with my parents, Denton and Jody Collins. They were both in Bible college in Missouri. My mom was from California. My dad was from Kansas. Now, that should have said it right there about an adventure in life, because putting a California girl in a Missouri Baptist Bible college was a little bit different. But my mom was bound and determined. She'd always had the dream to go to Africa. And at this time in college, they had one night there after my parents had met where they had in the gym stations set up in different areas in the gym. And they had one for missionaries for Africa, and they had one for different countries, and in one corner it had one for music ministry, and in another corner was another ministry. Well, my dad went, and he stood under the music ministry side. Well, and my mom, she went over and she stood dead under the Africa side. So by the story I'm telling you today, you know who won that battle. My mom. And so off they were to Ethiopia, and with a 9-month-old baby. That was me. And they, of course, my mom couldn't decide to just fly on an airplane or take it the easy way. They decided they would go on a freighter ship. Now, not a cruise ship, a freighter ship. That means they were the only passengers on there other than another lady who ended up falling in love with the captain on this month-long ship cruise, I guess you could call it. But the captain had offered his cabin to my parents because they had me on board. And I think they were all scared to death I'd fall overboard just learning to walk on the ship. My dad was allowed to go down in the hold and take out my high chair and a playpen because this was going to be a long voyage. All the way around, down through Egypt, and then back down into Ethiopia is how they arrived. Now, it took a month on that freighter ship to get to Africa. My brother Brent, he was born in Ethiopia, and he'll be here today. I'm so thrilled. This past year was the first year in 35 plus years we were all in Ethiopia together since the time we left, and that was amazing. It was really, really amazing. So my parents had huge adventures, many, many stories, but the one thing my parents did have was lots of faith. They lived there for 14 years. They loved Ethiopia. They loved the culture they became part of. I think you can see by the slides, I hope, that are up showing, they became entrenched in the culture. And they really nurtured and loved the believers in our church. At this point, my dad had been asked to be the director of the church in Addis, in the capital, and was doing a work there. And then the revolution hit, the Red Terror years, they call it. And there's a reason for that, because it was terror. There isn't a way to describe terror of that kind other than red terror. It was bloody, it was horrible. We would drive to school in the mornings, and you would see bodies piled at the side of the road from that night before. And in order to get that body back that was your child's body, you had to pay a bullet fee for the bullet that killed that child. Now, mind you, Ethiopia is one of the poorest countries in the world. They don't have money to spend in that way. The average income in Ethiopia now even is maybe $50 US a month. Now, that doesn't add up to much, but that was what they had to do to get their child's body back. My mom was driving the street one day, and in front of her were a bunch of students that were protesting, and in that moment, she watched as soldiers just mowed all these students down, everything in their trenches, and she ducked down in the car she was driving and just prayed that she wasn't going to be shot while trying to get out of the way. There were tanks rolling down the streets every day, daily, behind even your cars as you're driving through the streets. So it was terror. Our family lived in those years because my dad felt we should stay. Because he was the director of the mission, for 3 years during that time. Over 1 million Ethiopians were killed during this time. Many mass graves have still never been found. And we lost everything. My family had to escape the country during this time. And you wonder, and I know my folks wondered, I was a kid at that time. I was almost 14. And you don't know you're living in that. There's millions of children in this world living like that now. It's just a daily way of life. It sounds crazy. I don't know if it's a protective mechanism in your head, but you don't know you're living in that crazy world at that time. But my parents did. They knew that. And they knew that God had a plan. My family had to leave the country at that time and escape from Ethiopia. Now, God had a plan. His seeds were planted in Ethiopia. My parents didn't know that. They didn't know that after that 14 years, seeds had already been planted. He had plans for a harvest later on. So now I'm going to fast forward you about 30 years, real fast, to Ethiopia present. Now, Ethiopia present includes my husband, Dave. He's here today. And he's now in the plan. He and I have attended Good Sam for about 20 years. We started going here when we moved to Clements area about 20 years ago. My husband grew up in the Antioch Church and Covenant Church all his life, and so they told us, there's a Covenant Church in Valley Springs, and here we came. So we felt at home ever since. Now, we have a yours, mine, and ours family. It's made up of 5 kids and an angel, I say. We lost a daughter, some of you may remember, about 15 years ago. It'll be 15 years ago this year. And our youngest daughter, Tessie, she's here today. She's 13. And we have 6 grandkids and 1 on the way. Woohoo! So Dave and I both, though we came from Christian homes. Dave in the Covenant Church, like I said, in Antioch, and me, just a little farther away. I was in the Baptist Church. We have this rivalry going on. But the Baptist Church in Ethiopia. Until the revolution when my family escaped. Now, when my family escaped there, this is a whole nother part of our life. I don't have time to share that with you today. Maybe someday I will. But my parents escaped. They took out Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie was the emperor at the time. And when he was dethroned, all the parents had been killed, and who were the princes and princesses of the country, had been slaughtered, killed, thrown in prison. And the grandchildren were left. And my parents took 10 of them with us and escaped from the country at the time. So that's another whole nother ball of wax to cover. But that is how we ended up back in California, because my mom was a California girl, like I said, and her parents were here. It kind of always seemed funny to me that it just didn't seem like Kansas would be the place to raise a bunch of Ethiopian kids and white kids and just a mixed family, and California it was, so we were here. And how God made all this work and brought Dave and I together, I think should be one of the miracles in the Bible. But God has a way of connecting those dots, and he has a way of creating a picture. Both Dave and I had been divorced, both Christians married to non-Christians. That's a story all on its own. But the best part of that was that I wasn't looking for anyone, and neither was Dave at that time. But God gave me Dave. God gave me a Christian man. And by no means has this been a fairy tale. I mean, marriage is marriage, family's family, you know. But we've endured the blending of a family. We've endured me getting through nursing school. We've had, with having 4 kids at the time, the death of our first daughter together. The real gift in all of this is that our faith has been strengthened. And it's that tie that binds us together. No matter what trouble comes our way, we know that God is the one that ties us together. And that's so important in our life. And God gave me this husband who could stand by me. It's not always easy. I have to give him that. He can be patient with me. That's the hard part. I'm always coming up with something. And the husband that would pray with me. Now, my husband is a prayer warrior. Some of you may know that. But he is one who will pray for you. And he prays with me. And when I told him I felt the need to return to Ethiopia, I'm sure in his heart he thought, oh, brother. Outwardly he said, I really knew God had plans for us there. My mom had returned to Ethiopia just prior to this time, about 3 years in. We couldn't go back for many years, mainly because my parents were wanted for taking out the royal grandchildren. But the other reason was because of the war. And the government has changed, and my mom wanted to go back. Her dream is always to still go back to Ethiopia. And went back to assess the situation. She's had this plan in her mind to go back and do work there. Now, when she did this, I'm going to tell you a story real quick. This is how God works. She went back after 35 years of being out of the country, 35 plus years out of being there. And I wasn't back this time with her. And she was looking for our home. My dad had built a home there after all these years we'd been there, a beautiful home that had been taken. Well, it was taken after we left and escaped. No one knew where we went, so, the government had it. So in going back, she was searching for this house, and it took a while because the city had really grown, really expansive. And she emailed me in the States, and I said, Mom, remember it was by the East German embassy at the time. Well, there's no East Germany anymore. It's all European Union. So we remembered that, and I said, European Union. Well, she finally, after 2 weeks of searching, found that it was by the European Union building. It's all grown up now around the house, and she found the house. A lady saw her standing outside the door, and she says, I can let you in. I know who has that house right now. And my mom thought, oh, man, it just, that's very overwhelming. I can't imagine, well, I can now because I was able to do it as well, but the feeling my mom had after leaving everything. And when she let her in, my mom got to walk through the house, and see all the things that were there, And she left. She went to the Kabale. It's called Kabale. It's a housing authority that was set up during the communist years. Everybody had to register at these. When she went there, she asked the gentleman just about the house. He says, just a minute. And he turns around. Now, mind you, this is just a small little room, one little man with a key. He goes back, he opens it up, and he comes out, and he has a file, and he sets it to my mom, and he says, here. She opened that file. That was the deed still, after 35 years of war, terror, and everything else, to our house with my father's name on it, my brother's, my mom's, and my name on it, with pictures of us. God saved that house for us to do work back in Ethiopia. We're in the process of getting that house back. That's a miracle. That doesn't just happen willy-nilly, God has plans for us there. So she returned back, and, of course, I'm all excited because I'm going now. You can't stop me from going this time. So God put Dave in my life because that's a man I knew, could probably go back with me. So now I know most of you husbands would react differently to that, probably, thinking I was crazy. Say, why would your wife want to leave her good job? Why would she want to leave our house? Why would she want to leave our grandkids? Why? And certainly, why would you want to go with your mother-in-law? That was the biggest question. But, Dave hung in there, he really did. He was there, and he encouraged me. And he said, God's given you the ability to speak Amharic fluently, which I learned as a child to speak it fluently. And God got you through nursing school because he must want you to use that in some way. So with a little bit of what am I thinking, and a lot of encouragement from Pastor Jeff, and he knows what I'm talking about, He kept saying, Dave, you just got to go. You just have to experience it. There's no way to say it. You can't experience that country without being in it. You just have to be there. And it's true. Well, the only other option I had was to tell Dave it was a 24-hour plane flight because he loves to fly. So on we went, and I thought Jeff was going to have to come back down the tarmac or whatever it is and keep shoving Dave in the plane and push the doors shut. But Dave got on that plane, and it was his first plane trip to Ethiopia. Now, Dave said at the time, once we got there, he said, I didn't know what God wanted me to really do in my life, Shell. He said, but now I do. He loved Ethiopia. He loved the people. He didn't want to leave. I thought I'd have to be on the other end pushing him on the plane, trying to get him back to the States after this. And God had planned this. He knew I needed this husband with the faith and the willingness also to serve God. I couldn't just leave without him. That just wasn't going to happen. So I needed someone who would be able to be willing to go back and do that. Now, Tessie, she was easy. She couldn't wait to go back. She'd heard all the stories of the childhood and seen all the slides and the pictures, so she was excited. She is a phenomenal historian, I guess you'd say, at her age. She loves ancient history. She's the kid that took her hieroglyphic textbook to learn how to read hieroglyphics back with her. Not most 13-year-olds do that kind of thing, but she did. She loves ancient civilizations, and this was right up her alley. You can't get more ancient than Ethiopia. And our older kids, a couple of them will be here today, they were married and they're on their own. They were all encouraging of this. They're excited for us. They have that faith too. Our son-in-law, one of them, he just got into get his Master's of Divinity. So we've got this trail coming up behind us. We want to set this right. So through this journey, there's much prayer and planning and lots of questions. We began following what we felt God was really calling us to do. And the reason I give this small testimony is so people understand that we're really normal, for the most part. We have normal feelings and normal emotions and trials just like anyone else, and I shared that with you. And I often question, what am I doing? I know my husband questions what I'm doing usually. And I think that's the human thing. That's the human side of me. But my reliance on my faith in Christ, that's a learned thing. That's what we teach kids. That's what we teach people. The examples my parents set for me, the faith that they had in going to Ethiopia. I went on a jet plane. I didn't go on a freighter ship to Ethiopia. I took a 13-year-old, not a 9-month-old, to go back and start working there. So I had it a lot easier than my parents. The other thing is they didn't even know the language when they went back. I knew it fluently. So I just look at those struggles and the trials they went through and the faith they had. That gave me encouragement for that. And as I talk with you about Ethiopia and our mission, it's the Humani Project. It's my mom's. I want you to understand the importance of decisions and trusting God. Having faith that no matter how broken we are, that He is there for us. God is there for us. He wants to do great things in our lives. I'm going to share with you, now most women probably won't share out of their journals, but I'm going to share with you a good part out of my journal. That were in the first few days this past trip I went back to help open a clinic. Some of you know that who were here when we prayed before we left. And in opening this clinic back in Ethiopia with this doctor, an experience, it was very trying. But we got the clinic up and running in order to see how we could do with opening a clinic with our project in Ethiopia. Now, this is a piece I want to read. Rough night tonight. I'm really missing Dave and my kids. Really loving having Tessie here, though. She makes it easier when she crawls into that bed next to me. We both miss Dad and Dave. Reading my Bible, praying, God gives me the strength and the faith through this doubt and decision in doing this. I pray, God, give me the peace and the strength to do what is right and help me not to be afraid right now. I really worry about Tessie, her loneliness for her schooling and her friends, etc. Worrying a lot about Dave, money, and our place back home. Why am I doing this? Then I realized to stop and look at all that God has done this past year. I can't believe He would not give me the strength to pull me through this. I worry about my mom. She's been great. She's such a support here. She's so strong. But I'm sure she worries too. We're all making these big changes and living a lot on faith. And my Bible said tonight, Hebrews 11:1. I've already read this to you. Now, faith is confidence in what you hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Wow. I do have confidence in what we hope for here. It's a problem with the part I do not see. I pray that these are answered. What's going to happen on Monday when I meet with this doctor? What's going to happen to Tessie going to school here? That's one of my biggest worries. And what about finances? Maybe we're just crazy, and I'm glad we have round-trip tickets. It's almost 4 a.m., and I'm crying, and I'm worried. I miss Dave. But God knows that we have a purpose for all of this. I wonder how my mom and dad did this so bravely with so much less than what I had. Really missing Toya's calls. She calls 10 times a day. I really miss Tawny's hi, mommies. Love you guys so much. I really miss you guys. What am I doing when I could still be making great money and see my kids and my grandkids I miss so much? But I do think of the need here, the love that was shown to us, and what they've been through. They have lost so much and they have so little. What am I fussing about? I could go back tomorrow to all that I have. Just where do you want to start, God, and then what? Lots of noises outside tonight, all the sounds of Ethiopia. Heavy rain on the tin rooftops. In between the dogs barking and guarding the houses and huts, and every once in a while you hear a jib. A jib is a hyena. And we are near the foot of the small mountains here in the woods. So tired. Now I need to calm my brain down. Maybe prayer and then sleep. I need peace, Lord. Help me through this time. Now, the reason I share this with you today is to see that even though we go places and we experience this and people think we're strong and, man, how do you do that? We still question. I still question, today, how are we going to do this project? Is it right to do this? But God gives me that strength and the victories to know that it's only He who can work out the details in my life. If you knew all the details that had to be worked out for this and the things that keep happening and the order that it keeps happening, there's nobody else who can do that. It's certainly not me, and it's certainly not my mom or our family. That's God doing that. Recently, I was reading, and I was struggling because I knew I had to speak, to pray that God would really give me the words to share about our project in Ethiopia. And I opened up my daily bread, and there it was, and it said, if God can hang the stars on high, and He can paint the clouds that drift on by, and He could send that sun across the sky, what can His power do through you? Wow. When I read that, and I kept reading it, it continued to say, the list of heroes of the faith has grown through the ages. And we can be a part of that list. That's awesome. We can be a part of God's list that He has. Because of God's power and faithfulness, we can attempt great things for God, and we can expect great things from God. That's a pretty powerful statement. We can attempt great things for God, and we can expect great things back from God. Attempt's a key word there. Don't sit back. Try to do things for God. Go out there and do it. Witness. That's what we're here to do. Whether it's in our families, whether it's in this community, whether it's in Ethiopia, whether we had missionary girl leave this week from our church. Indonesia. We've had other kids go from our church. And Urban Plunge, that's here. Those are really important things. And I went on to say, when God is your partner, you can make your plans large. Wow. I thought, okay, God, Well, that said that in a nutshell, large. It's really even overwhelming at times. It's hard to explain to people. The whole project, it's huge. My mom doesn't think little because she knows what God can do. She's experienced that very well. But those who know me well also know this is a passion. Remember, God planted those seeds over 35 years ago. They grew while we were gone, and they're being harvested in Ethiopia in amazing ways today. We've reunited with believers in the church my parents started. Not in the same building. I think a picture of the new building they want to build and resurrect is up there. The old building had been taken away during the war. And a building, though, isn't about the church. The church has grown from that one church to over 100 churches and Bible studies all throughout the country. That's amazing. That's God's work. That is those people who have been tortured and taken off and hauled to prison doing that work for God. And here we are. We can't even walk out of our homes without being afraid to talk about him. That says something. Pastor Johannes is the pastor of the church that my parents started. He was a Sunday school child in the church that my parents started. That's pretty awesome. The Sunday school teacher that we met there, she's a Sunday school child that was in the Sunday school there, but her aunt was one of the first Sunday school teachers my mom taught how to teach Sunday school to. The first couple that my dad married in the church are now elders in the church. Daniel and Asamanich. Amazing couple. They were taken off and imprisoned. They were tortured. The things that happened to them would just make you cry. It's horrible. But that church is alive and it's spreading the gospel throughout Ethiopia. You see now there's pictures on the back of taxis, the crosses, and there's big signs in the city now. It says, Jesus is alive. I mean, that's incredible after the years that they were tormented. So if you don't think those seeds that you plant in your lives are unimportant, you think they're unimportant, you never know where those seeds are going to grow. And I'll tell you, I know Marquita, Sunday school teachers, people who work with the youth, those seeds are important to plant in this community. It's important to plant wherever you go, whether it's at your workplace or not. But they will grow. Marquita handed me this last week when I spoke at the women's ministries group. I was just thrilled. She says, Shellie, I came back last time and I said, this Sunday school they have at the church, they don't have anything. I am talking nothing. You may have seen pictures of the kids there. The teacher has no access to having things to teach with. And everything that my parents had ever had was all, stolen and thrown away. Marquita came up to me this last week with a box about yay big. She says, I don't use this anymore right now. It's all the flannel graph stories for the Bible. I mean, that is powerful. That's going to do so many things over there in Ethiopia. This teacher over there has nothing. I am talking literally nothing to show these kids these stories. That is going to just be amazing and draw kids from that community to come and hear these stories. Just from that one thing. It changes lives. I know here in Valley Springs, you have ministries here in this church. And you have the clothes closet and the food closet. Those are ministries too. That's missionary work. You may not think it, but it is. Get involved in those things. Those are important things. My mom recently said to me, and she said, Shell, when we were talking in Ethiopia, sitting down, having bunna, which is the coffee, she said, I never knew when I left Ethiopia that I even made a difference. I thought, how could you not know that you made a difference? Well, she left. She didn't know what the seeds had done. Those seeds had sprouted and grown until she went back to see that. I'm sad. My dad never got to see that part. It's really sad. He died of cancer a few years ago. So he never got to go back and see that. Those seeds had grown and the church had grown. But now we go to Ethiopia in the future to see where that harvest is. God has big plans in Ethiopia. Christians are allowed to practice their faith openly again without persecution. They met, I said, in secret during the war, and God has blessed them. We feel God has led us to help my mom actually start this project in Ethiopia. She's had this dream. It's Humani. It stands for humanitarian. This has been my mother's dream for many years, especially the last 12 years or so. She's really been working on this nonprofit. She's wanted a project there to help single women who are HIV positive and their children. Now, that's a big undertaking, let me tell you. It's a huge need in Africa. Ethiopia alone has over 2 million AIDS orphans. 2 million. That's hard to even wrap your head around that. And this project's goals are to empower these women who are HIV positive with education and trades, skills to gain agricultural and food security, clean water and sanitation, teaching them to care for themselves and their families and their communities. Same as we do here. We need to do those things here in our communities. This is to help them gain self-reliance and not be a burden to the community. This project will have a farm consisting of dairy, poultry, agriculture, renewable resources like bamboo. Selling this to the surrounding communities and farther than that, at the farmers market on the project grounds, we'll be selling things. Sewing productions, computer training, and clinic with counseling for these women and training. And God continues to answer these prayers, you know. That's a huge undertaking. How do you undertake that? How do you even wrap your head around that? I know my husband, he's probably thinking the same thing about my mom. Oh boy, here we go. But he knows that God is powerful. Let me continue and tell you what God did. While we're in Ethiopia, God was working right here in the U.S. He opened hearts of many, many people while we were there, placing the project on hearts of many people. A lot of these people aren't even believers. A friend who worked with my mom for about 17 years was an architect designer, and she in San Francisco, and she was designing. She said, during this time, I want to design your project if you ever do a project. Sure enough, she came through. She gathered this team together while we were there of architects, engineers, web designers, and on the list goes. My mom was stunned when she came home. She couldn't even believe that this team had come together. We couldn't afford a team like that. There's no way that we could do that. But God could do that. God is powerful. They're meeting every Tuesday at this big place in San Francisco. You know, you go up to this big story building, big boardroom, all for Humani. That's unbelievable to me. God's blessed me at my work. Lodi Memorial has donated beds, gurneys, crash carts, from Band-Aids to wheelchairs for this project. That's amazing. These doctors and nurses are trained now. Boy, they come. I have things in my locker. I have things in the locker room. I literally have to wheel carts out almost weekly, full carts of things that this hospital's donating. That, to me, is God's work even in our communities here. It's teaching people that God is powerful. They said, how are you doing this, Shell? And I said, I'm not doing this. This isn't me. This is God. He's making this happen. Remember what I said. When God's your partner, you can make your plans large. And he has done that. The CEO is going back with us this October of Lodi Memorial Hospital. That's crazy. He came to me and asked me. I thought, okay, I've got the job for you. You know, this is awesome. He gets to come back. He won a fellowship award. He's coming back and reporting that to the California Medical Association. That is awesome. You know, that's God's work. That's God's working here. That's God's working in Ethiopia. That's God working those medical doctors. You know, he's touching lives through this, the whole project that I never even expected. I'm going to give you one last story. This is really cool. So we're driving to San Francisco with my CEO, the president of the hospital this last week. I want him to meet the team and kind of tell what he wants to do and be a part of that. So I said, Dave, we'll take my Suburban, okay? So my brother, his wife, my mom, our family group going off to San Francisco in the Suburban. Now, if you ever try to park a Suburban in downtown San Francisco, the financial district, that's a chore. And Dave told me I had to drive because he wanted to be good on this trip. So I'm driving, and I pull up into this parking garage, and as I'm pulling in, the man's going like this. No, you can't come in here. And I'm thinking, okay. I said, that's fine. I roll down my window. He says, you're too big to park here. And I said, okay, no problem. But don't let anyone in behind me. I have to do about an 8-point turn to get out of this place. So I'm turning around, and I asked him, I said, well, where can I go? And he says, go 2 places down. They should have room for you. And I thought, this is like, the Bethlehem Inn kind of thing. Go 2 doors down, and they'll have room for you. So we go down 2 doors. I'm driving down after trying to turn this thing around. I think everyone in the back's, closing their eyes. We drive into the 1 2 doors down, and I'm looking at this young man. He comes up to us. I'm looking at him, and my mom looks at me, and I look at her, and I know Dave's in the back going like this. I said, are you Ethiopian? He says, yeah. I said, Tanastadlin. His mouth drops. I mean, he's stunned. I said, Ndamna, Danana. He says, how do you know Amharic? I said, I grew up in Amharic. I said, Azano Yadaku. I grew up there. And he says, his breath was taken away. I said, we're here. We're working on a project for Ethiopia. We're meeting them today. And he says, man. And Dave's in the back hitting my boss. He said, see, that's how it happens. He said, that's God working in this place. If I had not parked in that first one, been sent to the second one, we never would have met that man. Okay, that's not the best part. So we come back down. Dave tells Joe, he says, you watch, that car's going to be parked out front, ready to roll. So it was. That wasn't the best part. He asked for a card, so we gave him a card, Humani card. That next morning, my mom had an email, and it says, you met my brother yesterday at the parking garage. I'm a medical engineer, and I have been working on HIV testing kits, and I would like to be a part of your project. That is the way God works. He can work in parking garages. He can work in your life. He can work in this community. That is how God works, but you need to let him do it. Don't get mad when he sends you out of that parking garage. Go to the next thing. Okay? That's what he can do. I have a quote here, and it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it's in your handouts, and I want you guys to have this. It says, don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Now, that's powerful. That's witnessing. You go through and go where there's no path. Leave a trail. That's what God calls us to do in this world. That's why we're here. So, as I am letting you out today and we're going into the communities, I want you to continue to pray for Ethiopia. Pray for Humani and the continued growth of that project, for the seeds to be continually planted. There's a saying in Ethiopia, and I'm going to leave you with this. It's a cute saying. It says, it means slowly but surely the egg will walk. Wow. Our egg's going to walk. That's Humani project. So keep us in your prayers. Keep Ethiopia in your prayers. And we're going to keep reporting back to you about the work that's going on there. Thank you.